So my name is Juliet Sharman. I've been passionate about music all my life. I grew up in Chichester, down in Sussex, but absolutely, I think my first ever record was Procol Harum, Why Shade of Pale, which was given to me by a boyfriend at a bus stop, quite young. But I absolutely loved that. I played as a child. I started with piano. I played flute. I played quite a few instruments, and I played in the county choir. I sang in the county choir. I played in the county youth orchestra, all that sort of stuff. I enjoyed classical music. I did all my grades, but actually, it was actually rock music was my passion. I think aged about 13, I was probably asked to play in a band first, and that was keyboards and singing. And it went from there, really. I played in various different lineups. I sort of guested on my sister's boyfriend's band, things like that. At home, I would do things like, I don't know if you remember a program called Face the Music. And I'd do sort of on a Friday evening, I'd do Face the Music on the piano with the family. And I'd play little intros of songs, and they'd all have to guess what it was. And it's ridiculous. I was probably about 9, and I used to give them all pen and paper, and they had to write down what the songs were, and I'd tell them a little bit about all the songs. So and I studied music. Obviously, doing A level, it was obviously very much classical, Mozart, and all that sort of orchestrations and things. But I couldn't wait to go to London. Where I came from was absolutely stunning, but I didn't realise how stunning it was till I moved up to London, because that was the excitement. I went to Goldsmiths briefly, doing drama and music. I wrote the music for the London Student Drama Festival, playing the flute in that. And I got in a band again. We were going to be terribly, terribly famous, so I dropped out, and we weren't, as you can imagine. I briefly went into journalism, writing for nothing to do with music, because it was all I could get at the time, but things like office equipment news and business information technology, car mechanic magazines like that. I used to write their film reviews, so it was great. I used to go to every film going at the time. I had a little column in all those magazines writing the film reviews. And I then, from there, we formed a band called Press Gang. We were all journalists. And I saw an advert in, I think it was Evening Standard or one of those, for a publishing company that were looking for somebody to pretty much do everything. So I applied for that and got it. And that was everything from sort of helping running the studio, copyright royalties, absolutely everything. I was actually taken on by a company called Shapiro Bernstein, who were mainly based in New York, but they just had one guy in London and the catalogue was unbelievable. We had things like Je T'aime, My Way, I think Yes We Have No Bananas. I mean, it was an incredible catalogue. But quite early on, I had quite a lot of responsibility there, because it was just the two of us doing the London office. And we shared offices with Heath Levy Music. So I worked very closely with the guys at Heath Levy, and we had a studio there. So I was helping booking the studio, tape copying, all that sort of stuff. And we were able to use the studio in downtime, which was fantastic. And then one of my colleagues there, she went on to work for Jive Records. And Jive Records were looking for an A&R coordinator, and she said, I know just the person. So I then got the job at Jive as A&R coordinator, which again was doing everything, again with the studios, label copy. The grounding was fantastic. So I was probably 21, 22 when I joined Jive Records. And I got the job there through a lovely friend, Barbara Stanton, who was at Heath Levy. Sadly, she died last year of breast cancer, but she was incredible. She became head of international at BMG. She went on to have an amazing career, but she was head of international at Jive at the time. So she recommended me for the job. I was A&R coordinator for a while, which was, as I say, doing label copy, booking the studios, looking after the engineers and the producers and the artists. It was kind of an all-encompassing job. And I then went from there to being A&R manager, and having my own roster of artists, and being up and down the motorway, signing bands, going scouting, basically. But I looked after people like Ruby Turner, Billy Ocean, Samantha Fox, quite a cross-section of artists there. And we had a great setup. Clive Calder was the most incredible guy to work for at Zomba. The Zomba group was we used to call it the Zomba family. It really was a family, because Zomba had Zomba Music, Zomba Productions, Jive Records. We went on to have Silvertone Records, Battery Studios. It really was incredible. And he had this empire in Willesden. I think every time some houses were up for sale, suddenly he'd buy another, Studio One then appeared in Chaplin Road. And then he set up Dream Hire, which is an equipment hire company. He set up Impulse, which is a promotion company. Everything was set in Willesden. It was amazing. There was nothing else happening in Willesden. It was very, very clever, the way he had this massive area. Then set up in New York. So I spent quite a bit of time in New York working with the rap guys. So they were, again, Jive were the start of the whole rap thing. They had Houdini, were probably the first, I think they are down as the first ever rap act. And went on to have Cool Mo D, Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. They were adorable to work with. That was the times when Will Smith was in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Early days of his career, but was a really, really lovely guy to work with. I've worked with him in New York and in London. He was always the first person to say, "Do you want a cup of tea?" which was lovely. And Tribe Called Quest, Full Force. I should probably look around my walls to see who else. But a lot of the rap guys, they were really, really nice guys to work with. And again, he had a very similar setup in New York. It was an office with a studio, so everything all happened there. They then set up in Chicago as well. Yeah, they were incredible times, and the people I met and worked with were phenomenal. But going back to who I worked with at Jive, we did an album with Tom Jones, who at the time was pretty much doing Las Vegas, and then we did the Kiss single with him, which went on to relaunch his career. A lot of American artists like Millie Jackson came over and worked with us. With Ruby Turner, I did the Motown songbook. So we worked with the Four Tops, the Temptations, Jimmy Ruffin. Again, the list is endless. It is the most incredible album. Unfortunately, it's not available anymore, which is so sad. But I have talked with Sony and trying to, because Zomba was sold, to try and get the rights to do it again, but we haven't got there yet. But I think it would be. It's such a stunning album. It should be available. I'm not sure you can get it anywhere. I think they're changing hands on eBay for very large amounts of money. Again, working with Battery, the people in there were incredible. We had, because obviously we looked after Mutt Lange, and he did Bryan Adams' album, Def Leppard album. I'm trying to think who else. Well, a lot. We were the early days of things like Fairlight Programmers. So again, nobody did that then. We had a programming room. We then had 2 programming rooms. We had a guy called Pete Q Harris, who was, I think, is again down as probably one of the first ever Fairlight programmers. And then Phil Nicholas learned from him. He became very well known doing it. Mutt Lange did a band called Romeo's Daughter, who actually I still manage now. I've worked with them now for 30 odd years, a very, very long time. Lovely, lovely guys. But Mutt did their album, which was phenomenal. It really was absolutely incredible. But they've obviously gone on to be very successful since. He was they were very much one of Mutt's babies. The early days of Zomba were Clive Calder, Ralph Simon, and Ron Schiff came over from South Africa. They set up the whole thing. But Clive was very much the pinnacle of it, and Mutt Lange came with them as well from South Africa. We also brought over Jonathan Butler from South Africa, so I was involved in trying to literally getting him visas, where to live with his wife, settling him here in this country. Again, Jonathan's gone on. I think he lives in New York now. He's been on tour with Eric Clapton. He's done phenomenal. I think I might have a Jonathan Butler somewhere up. There's a Jonathan Butler there. Again, lovely, a really, really talented guy, but he came from nothing and came over and was pretty much made by Jive. The great thing about Jive and Zomba was the whole 360. So, if we had artists like Sarah Jane Morris was another one of my artists, and if she wasn't busy, you put her in the studio with some of the writers from Zomba Music, and really interesting collaborations worked out. A bit like Samantha Fox, who we signed, put her with John Astrop and Jolyon Skillian. Jolyon had been working with Billy Ocean and Ruby Turner. Everybody worked with everybody. It really was a really, really great setup. And we went on to do, there were a few films I did. Dancing Through the Dark. We did the music for that. So you'll find they're all Jive artists in there. We then did the Jewel of the Nile, which was obviously a big hit with When the Going Gets Tough with Billy Ocean. But you'll find there's Ruby Turner in there, there's Precious Wilson in there, there's all the Jive artists are in there. And we did Romancing the Stone as well. So we did some putting music on. Again, that was, you were given the film and then you just put the music on it. The other one we did was Robin Hood. So Everything I Do It For You, Bryan Adams. So Mark was in the studio with Brian when, looking for a song. Absolutely perfect. And obviously Everything I Do has gone on to be absolutely huge. So I did the A&R thing for a long while. We had Silvertone. So in Silvertone, we had people like the Stone Roses through to Buddy Guy, John Lee Hooker, quite a cross section of artists as well. Andrew Lauder ran Silvertone, but they were in the same complex as us. Again, worked very closely with them. I also used to do all the mastering, so I worked with all the mastering engineers at Townhouse and CBS, etc. A lot of them have gone on to be at Abbey Road now. Jeff Pesh, people like Miles Scholl, Tim Young, the amazing mastering engineers. They were great times. Obviously, when vinyl was really, 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 really big thing. Some of those you'll find I've got little messages etched on the inside of the albums to remember. So that they were amazing times. And I then went from being A&R manager, I went on to run the producer management company. And that's when I was looking after Mark Langer, Steve Lipson, Chris Nagel, Steve Power, Chris Tangarides, Tony Platt, guys like that. They were an amazing bunch of guys. And some of the guys that had been the engineers and the tape-ups that I'd look after then started moving up to being producers. People like Nigel Green, who were very successful, went on to live in America. Brian Chuck New, again, very successful. They all started off as sort of tape-ups, then engineers, and then producers. They were very, very good at Zomba of bringing people on. Same with the songwriters. They might put a baby songwriter with a very established songwriter. People like also Barry Eastman and Wayne Braithwaite in America. They would come over and write. They wrote with Jolly and Skinner. They wrote a lot of Billy Ocean hits, a lot of Ruby Turner. If You're Ready, Come Go With Me was written by them. So they were great at cross-pollinating, I suppose you could say, which was really, really successful. Working with the producers, again, that was quite a cross-section. So Chris Tangarides, was Gary Moore, Ozzy Osbourne. There was a Japanese band. It'll come to me in a minute. A Japanese band that I think we did about 6 albums with. They were amazing. Came over every year to do an album with Chris. They absolutely loved him. Again, Tony Platt did Ingvar Malmsteen. I remember doing with Tony Platt. Steve Power had a lot of success with James. Oh, Sit Down. Remember that track? He then went on to work with Robbie Williams. He worked on Let Me Entertain You. All of that stuff he did with Guy Chambers. So Guy Chambers started off working with us at Battery as well. He was in the early days. There were some amazing names in the early days, or amazing people that have gone on to do other stuff. Steve Lipson, I did the Annie Lennox album Why with him. Actually, that was probably the last album I did. That and the Bryan Adams Waking Up the Neighbours were the last 2 albums I think I did before having my daughter. So I left in 1993 because more basically when I had my daughter, she was in Ashgate Ormond Street a little bit at the beginning, and we thought she was going to have issues. She's now 32 and fine. But it was, and again, Clive Calder was incredible. He offered me if I wanted to come in 1-2 days a week. That was absolutely fine. But my priority was my daughter at the time. So I just couldn't. I couldn't commit. I think if it was life now, I would have done it, because nowadays we've got email. A lot more people work from home. Those days it wasn't an option to work at home. It was you come to the studios. It wasn't an option. So I think nowadays I probably would have stayed there, but different times. So I left Jive, and obviously that first sort of year was looking after my daughter, but luckily she got through and she was okay. And I then started teaching. Well, actually, I started doing music parties for children. So and teaching peripatetic and nurseries around. So as she was doing things, she was mother and baby groups. Sorry, that's what it started with. So I went to a couple of mother and baby groups where there was like sing-songs, and it was so bad. I just thought, right, I could do better than that. So I sort of turned up with my guitar and did that sort of thing. And then people started saying, you know, would you do my daughter's birthday party, etc., etc. So it led from that to me entertaining at parties. I'd do a sort of 2-hour parties and things at weekends, and I'd make puppets. I'd write songs about, you know, ladybirds and bees and whatever, and making puppets to go with it, and all the children, I'd make flowers for them to hold and all that sort of stuff. So so for 7 years, actually, I taught music and drama around schools in the area, and did these sort of music parties, starting off on the piano, but actually I ended up on a guitar because that way I could look at the children and had them around me, which was lovely. So I did that for a while. And then Ruby Turner, who I worked with at Jive, who was one of my artists at Jive, who is also my son's godmother, she asked me if I would help A&R her album. I said, well, kind of being a mum, but okay. So I started working with her, started helping her get gigs. She then started working, you know, we started working with Jools Holland, and obviously I wasn't needed quite so much when she was doing that. Sarah Jane Morris then said, I hear you're back in the business, so can you look after me? So I started working with Sarah Jane, started doing touring and stuff with her. And Romeo's daughter then said, I hear you're back in the business. So then in 2005, I set up JPSM Management, doing what I do now. Basically probably because of those three. They started it, and then and the rest is history, was really what happened after that. But so it started off literally just looking after Jive artists that I'd looked after back in the day, and then I went on to sign a lot of others. I now look after people like Mo Pleasure, who is was the MD for Michael Jackson, which had done the last tour, Bette Midler, Christina Aguilera. He's just done The Voice in LA. The most incredible, he's Earth, Wind and Fire, most incredible instrumentalist. And his partner, Kedmar, is the most amazing powerhouse vocalist. She won one of those TV programs, but is stunning. So I worked with Mo and Kedmar. I worked with Gilad Atzmon, the sax player. I worked with him. I worked with Sarah Gillespie. We've just done an incredible project working on at the moment called She Writes Songs, which is promoting female singer-songwriters. So we did a huge launch at Ronnie Scott's about 2 weeks ago. And we had 8 artists performing. So we had Shazanay from All Saints, Rumour, Joe Harrop, Sarah Jane Morris, Kitty Crawford. But anyway, eight fantastic female singer-songwriters performing. And that's just building. Had a launch in California for that as well. So doing that. I also do, I have an event called Birdcage, which I do on the last Tuesday of every month. And that is for up and coming artists. It's for the music industry. So I program 7 unsigned artists and 1 legend slot every month. And all the audience are music professionals. So you never know who you're going to get. In fact, the last one, I had somebody who's casting a Shaka Khan musical who just picked up somebody from the showcase. I had a phone call yesterday from somebody who came to one of my showcases who is looking for a pianist for a new show that's going on with Stephen Fry. And it looks like they're going to take this guy for that. You never know. People have got record deals from it, publishing deals from it, sync rights, all sorts of things. So at the moment it's doing exactly what I wanted it to do. And the ones that are really good, I then go on to program them elsewhere. I do program at the Underbelly in Soho. They've got a beautiful piano there, so I do Sunday lunches there and sometimes week slots. I do the Ivy West Street. I do their Sunday lunches there, and I do the piano bar in the club on a Tuesday. And the last Friday of every month, I do what we call loft sessions in the Ivy. So I had Sarah Jane Morris doing the last one. I've got Mo Pleasure doing June the 20th. And then from that, I've ended up doing a few of the Ivies around the country. So I did the Cheltenham Jazz Festival at the Ivy Cheltenham. I've done the Ivy Marlow, the Ivy Bath. I've done quite a few of the Ivies from that. But on top of that, obviously, I do touring. I look after Antonio Forcioni, the Italian guitarist. He does a lot of work with Giorgio Serci, so the two of us do that. I'm actually, at the moment, trying to do more things in Ealing, which I've never really done before. So today I've got a big showcase tonight at Pitshanger Manor, which is Sir John Soane's house. And it's basically, for your £12 ticket, you get to look around the art gallery, you get to look around the house, and then you get a concert. And the artist performing tonight is a fabulous singer called Lou Marie, and the keyboard player is and who sings with her is Luke Matthews, who happens to be my son. Recognise the same surname, but he's also an incredible musician. He plays in a blues band as well and a folk rock band. He plays in other lineups, but they're doing that tonight. They also do a lot of performing around London. So I'm doing that. I'm doing a show at Questers. Which is the local theatre here, with the Marquee Club All-Star Band, which is another lineup I'm working with, which has got Mel Gaynor from Simple Minds, Gus Isidore, Sidi Flavari, incredible lineup. Sorry, yes, I have it sitting here. They are fabulous, and there's a strong link between Ealing or the Ealing Club and the Marquee Club. So that's the reason I'm doing it at Questers, and we're tying it in with the Blues Festival that goes on in Walpole Park. Because obviously these guys, the Stones, the Who, Freddie Mercury, they all started at the Ealing Club and went on to the Marquee Club. So when we do our show at Questers, we're going to do a little bit of a history thing beforehand. We've done a documentary, and there's one still being filmed with Simon Napier Bell, who you may know from Wham, etc. And we've had incredible people from, Toyah Willcox, all sorts of people are on that. It's incredible who played at the Marquee Club. You forget, because it goes actually back to sort of the Cleo Lane, I think, the 50s, all the way up to Romeo's Daughter, who I worked with. They were probably one of the last ones who played there. So it is incredible the amount of people that played at the Marquee Club. And the great thing about this show is that we have, we did the first one we did at the 100 Club with Jools Holland guesting. We can have special guests. Anyone who's played at the Marquee Club can be one of our special guests. When you come to one of our shows, you have no idea who's going to turn up. So it's quite exciting. And I do a lot of other stuff with the Marquee guys. I do Ozzy Beezer. So I've just had Ozzy Beezer at the Jazz Cafe. The lineup has obviously changed substantially since the old days, but Del Richardson is still in there. So Ozzy Beezer. I do a lot of African stuff. I've got Abbas Dodu, who's an incredible drummer, who also is the drummer in Ozzy Beezer, but I've got a sort of an offshoot with him. I'm working with Climax Blues Band. I've got them doing a show at the Pheasantry. So I kind of program all over the place. I've got a lot of up and coming, which I love doing. So I've got an amazing artist called Aria, who I first discovered actually when we were doing a bit of she writes songs with up and coming singer-songwriters at Pizza Express. I thought she was fantastic. So I went on to program her. She actually pretty regularly does the Tuesday slot at the Piano Bar at the Ivy. And I've got her doing her first album. Well, her album launch will be at Crazy Cox in June. So that's very exciting. She's only 22, come out of BIM. She's absolutely fantastic. Looks fabulous. She's really got it. So I think she's going to go a long way. But another guy called Ollie Height I look after, who's a pianist. He's from the South Coast. He's very, very successful in the South Coast. Hadn't really done stuff in London. He's starting doing more and more in London. And his daughter, who is actually, I think she's about 18, 19, is incredible. So again, I'm sort of bringing her on to do more. So we had a show, we called it Tom Seals Presents. And it started off with, because obviously in COVID, you couldn't have everybody in a room together. So, he'd be in one room. We had sort of 3 band members in the back garden and the brass section in the front garden, and the celebrity was on Zoom. And it worked really, really well. So we did 13 episodes on Sky, which was very, very successful, but Sky don't pay. So we couldn't afford to. We're very lucky. The team we had filming were from Bake Off, but they were free because they were not free. We did pay them, but they were available. Sorry, when I say free, I mean available, because nobody was working. So we had an incredible film crew. But Sky weren't paying. They wanted to give us a second series, but they couldn't pay, and I couldn't afford to do it. I'd managed to get finance to do the first one. I couldn't for the second. So we then took it live. So we then did it live. We did it at, we started at Pizza Express. We started small. We had Noddy Holder, Bob Harris, again, Joe Brand, James Acaster, all sorts of amazing, Chris Difford, incredible people we did. And then we were too big. So we then moved to St Martin's in the Field, Trafalgar Square, in the church there. So it's 500 capacity. We did an incredible one with, actually we had James Acaster there, and we did Robert Lindsay there, did a few there. And then we got on so well with Noddy Holder that we decided to do a little bit of a tour with him. So we did Walsall Arena, we did Wimborne Arts, we did the Lowry in Manchester. We did some great shows with him. He was incredible. And it was a little bit of a coup because he hadn't sung in years. And he actually at Walsall Arena got up and sang. He'd had esophagus cancer, so he wasn't able to sing. So he actually got up and sang at Walsall Arena, which, as you can imagine, the whole place erupted. So that was amazing. So that show ran for a while and was very successful. But we're not doing that anymore. But it was at its time, it was the right thing during COVID. The other thing I did in COVID was streaming from Ronnie Scott's. So I had people like Sarah Jane Morris, Antonio Forcioni streaming from Ronnie's, and that was amazing because people wanted proper music in their sitting rooms. And it was there would be me, the guy filming, possibly one other person, and the band on stage. And we obviously had to have cocktail of the day as well, which had influence on what the cocktail of the day was, so that people at home could make what their cocktail of the day was to watch their show. So that was a very busy time. I wasn't, people talk about what books and things they were reading. We were really busy. Apart from that, there was all the cancelling gigs, reorganising them, cancelling again, reorganising, because you never knew how long it was going to go on. We also then were able to do shows. So we went to Dubai. We did some stuff in Dubai for the, I think it was called the 2020 Summit, but actually it ended up being in about 21 in the end, or 22, because of COVID. It all got moved, but they kept the name Dame, and that was amazing because there was a massive dome. It was all the countries in the world have representation there. That was a really amazing opportunity, and we did a lot of shows in Dubai because it was more open over there. You could, while we weren't here. We also did some shows in Portugal again, which again it was more open over there. The only problem was I was having to go with a folder like this with everybody's COVID tests that they'd done them within 24 hours, and then you'd find one of the band hadn't done them within 24 hours. So at Heathrow, you'd be going off trying to go and get another COVID test to get that done. And it was that, from that point of view, a time I wouldn't want to repeat. But we did really enjoy the Sky Show was good times, and those tours were really good. So I think I've kind of covered briefly, probably forgetting a lot of my years in the music industry. It's been a long time. But I've loved every minute of it. I think my heyday probably was when I was at Jive with literally it was hits every week. We always had quite a lot of records in the top 10. It really was quite an amazing time. But it's so changed now, because now it's not about are you in the charts. I don't even know who number one is this week. Then I'd have known exactly who number one was. I suppose we all used to hang on what top of the pops. Who's on? Have we got on top of the pops this week? Or have we got on Wogan? We used to have a lot of people on Wogan, and every week it was who can we get on? We've got Ruby on this week. We've got Billy on. We always had somebody on Wogan, and now there's so few opportunities. I mean, there's the Graham Norton show, but I think Strictly has a live band. There's very few opportunities now to do anything on television. And having said that, most kids don't watch TV. I mean, my son never watches television. He watches everything it's all YouTube. So he knows YouTubers, but he wouldn't know. I very rarely would sit down and watch a film, or he'd probably go to the cinema to watch a film, but he wouldn't really he doesn't sit and watch television ever. It's very different. And I mean, there are good ways of getting found. So things like Spotify, where they say, well, you like this, so you might want to listen to this. So there are opportunities like that. Obviously, social media is absolutely huge. I have to spend far more time than I would like to on social media, because that's the way now. It's the way of promoting gigs. That's where everybody's seen. I think that the problem with it is, there's a lot of festivals and venues that say, oh, well, I don't really want to program them because they've only got 1,000 followers. I mean, they've got huge names have only got 500 followers because they don't do social media. But you'll get somebody who's up and coming. There was an instance I know recently where there was somebody who was booked for a gig who only did a half-hour slot because that's all they could do. And obviously they charged far too much for these tickets. Everybody went away very angry with the venue, actually. And it was somebody who'd become a TikTok sensation during COVID, who didn't know how to perform. They had no patter. They literally played straight through. That was it. And it was like, no, you've got to have a bit of patter, a bit of light and shade. They didn't have to put a running order together. All of that is gone. And I think all the styling thing, I think, it's very important how you look. And I don't know that I don't know. I mean, some artists are like that, but I think a lot of artists don't think about that. And I quite often have to say to people, no, you're playing Ronnie Scott's. You don't turn up in a pair of jeans. You've got to look like you really, like you belong. And I think that I'm not sure there are people doing that anymore. Um, uh, there are obviously some, but I think in a lot of cases, people need a little bit of a direction on that. But it's so different. Things like, we used to make money out of merch. You don't get a lot of money for gigs, whereas at least at the end of it, you'd always sell a shed load of CDs, or there'd be a huge long queue wanting you to sign things. We do still get that, and you get people saying, I don't even have a CD player, but I want the CD, and they want to put it on the bookshelf and they want it signed by the band. So we do still sell CDs. To be honest, we could actually just not have the CD in there, because I don't think that's what they're buying. They're buying, I think we need to think through what we do. We do things like we do guitar picks, we do beanies, we do T-shirts. I mean, bands like Romeo's Daughter, we've tried branching out into different colour T-shirts, but people just want a black T-shirt with the white writing with the tour dates on the back. We've tried grey, we've tried blue, we've tried other colours. They don't want that. They want black with white writing. And you go to a Romeo's Daughter gig, you stand at the back and you just see tour dates from the last 20 odd years on the back of people. Probably everybody's got a completely different T-shirt on, but that's what they like. That's what they want. So it is a very, very different industry. It's hard to make money. Bizarrely, the fees have gone down from COVID. A lot of venues have said, oh, I'm sorry, we can't pay you what we used to pay because we struggled through COVID. But so did the artists struggle through COVID. And I think that's very unfair. And I think there's a lot of these venues actually got funding from the government and the artists didn't. And I think that's really, really bad. So when they say, well, we struggled, well, actually you didn't, because I know you got funding and these artists didn't. And I mean, I know a lot of artists who ended up driving Waitrose vans and all sorts of things like that. A lot of them have gone into, they have other jobs now because they had to. And they've realised, actually, I can earn a reasonable amount doing that if I do a day job, and then I can do my gig in the evening, which is really, really sad. And it shouldn't be like that. I mean, there's an artist I've taken on recently who has been out of the country for a long time, and he wants to do a UK tour, and I was getting all these dates together, and then going through the deal, he said, well, hang on, I was getting double that 10 years ago. And I said, I'm afraid that is what it is. Or some venues are just doing door splits, and that's really hard. You find the venues don't have marketing people anymore, which they used to. So everything is on you. You're a booking agent, you're a promoter, you're PR, I suddenly find I have so many hats because the venues aren't giving you any support. You're saying things like, can you give me a list of your local radio stations and things? I don't know what they are up in Norwich or whatever. And they don't have anyone to give you that information. Or there's data protection and they can't give you any information out as well, which is also ridiculous. So it is very, very hard. And you find as an agent, as a manager, there's so many things you have to do. The other thing that's very difficult now is touring in Europe. So I've always done a lot in Italy and Germany and places like that. And it is so complicated now going to those places, and becomes not worth it cost-wise. And all the paperwork you have to do. I kind of resist it. I'm trying to do more in the UK. I have got a tour coming up in Prague, and I have got some tours coming up abroad, but I'm trying to do not so much because they are such hard work and for probably less money at the end of the day. So yeah, the industry has changed, but there were very, very good times. It's been good to me in the past. And I'm trying to give back by doing this birdcage event, helping the up-and-coming unsigned artists, helping them get their feet and trying to give them advice. And the other thing I try at the birdcage thing, I have someone from the PRS come, have someone from the MU come, and they go and chat to them in the green room. I have radio people who come in. I've got an acronym, which is PERFORM, which tells them what they need to bring, and have your EPK, bring this, bring that, bring that. Because the amount of people who have come to my birdcage have said, radio people have said, right, I thought that artist was great, and I've asked them to send me a track or a SoundCloud link or something, and they never hear again. So I don't understand. I'm thinking, I'm giving you your break here and you're not following it up. So I now have a thing that an email out to them before they come. I say, please, will you bring this on the night, or have business cards, or have something, some connection, something you can give people who are there, because they won't chase you up. They've got too many other people to look after. So you've got to follow it up. So the business has changed, but I'm trying to keep it together.